Greetings. If you go around my house, you'll find some projects that I like to refer to as my problem projects. It's not that the project was the problem, it's that I ran into some problem, and my way of dealing with that problem is to go out and make something. Making things is my way of dealing with adverse situations. And this video is one of those projects, to be frank about it. And I will explain a little more detail in a little bit, but I have there's a method to this I would like to use, so just forgive me for a few. As you all know, I have my studio cat Bella, and she is actually one of a family that we have. I've got Riza and Rhiannon. I've got Fox. I've got Griffin, and last but not least we got Yuri. And then of course our two dogs, Iro and Hiccup. And you know, I routinely tell people I don't have a family of 3, I have a family of 11, and 8 of them just happen to be quadrupeds. I wanted to kind of do something different today, and I wanted to talk about man's relationship historically with the house cat, what we call today the house cat, because it is historical. And while a lot of people go, well, yeah, or no, duh, I don't think a lot of people realize how culturally significant the house cat is, specifically the domesticated cat, is to human civilization. First of all, and I honestly didn't know this until I was doing some research for this video, the earliest evidence we have of a human cat relationship, a working relationship that was more than just two people sharing the same chunk of ground, was actually a grave site on the island of Cyprus. And according to the records that we have in the testing that was done of the grave site, this grave site is 9,500 years old. And this is important for 2 reasons. One, it is a very important benchmark for where we can first document man and domesticated cats interacting on a what we consider a formal or regular basis. But also, the island of Cyprus at that time did not have any native feline inhabitants. So this cat not only interacted with people and was not only important to them, but it had to be brought over by them, because we know that the people weren't native there. They had to have been brought over, they had to have boated over from the mainland. And the gravesite specifically was a child and a cat buried together. Now there's no evidence to suggest that that the cat was killed for the purpose of this burial. We don't know what the circumstances were leading up to it, but we do know that grave sites at the time were usually very specific. While different cultures had different traditions, only things that were important to that individual or that family were buried with them. And the fact that we have a child, which would be a devastating loss in any culture at any time, was buried with a cat, the skeleton we know to be an early domesticated house cat, as we would call them today. That speaks to the relationship going back 9,500 years. And I just want you to take a minute and process that. This is the earliest, we're talking about the period of time where hunter-gatherer tribes were just beginning the transition to agricultural farming. So one of the great human societal evolutions was taking place, and it started, and cats were there for it. Now, we all know that, we've all heard that cats were worshipped in Egypt, and that's sort of accurate. There's a lot more nuance to that. Cats were seen, from what we know, of course, cats were seen as deities of some form who were also mute and could not interfere with the world around them, but were some sort of superior being who were here to watch over us. Now, in Egypt, the goddess Bastet is often depicted in cat form. So, we now have cats involved in religion. And we do a lot of animals in religion, but the other thing that we know as a historical fact is that in Egypt, it was traditional that when a family lost their house cat, part of the mourning process was a prescribed month of mourning where all of the family would shave their eyebrows off. And we know that in Egypt, the act of shaving certain hair or using makeup to accentuate certain parts of the face or highlight certain expressions was part of their cultural expressions set. So there was a prescribed way of mourning your house cat's loss. And for anyone who's owned a cat, we can relate to that. That is a way of expressing an emotion, a very powerful emotion for a very powerful friend. And they had a cultural tradition for it. And this is in Egypt, like one of the earliest urban civilizations. If you move forward a little bit of time, this was something else I found interesting. Now, the Greek historian Herodotus reported that killing a cat was forbidden in the city he lived. And forbidden was a very specific term here. That's not saying that it was culturally not allowed, saying that it was legally not allowed. So you now have the law stepping in and going, you shall not kill a house cat. You shall not kill one of the cats. And it's one thing to say that cats are economically beneficial because part of the reason cats bonded with humans, and we know this, or we're almost entirely certain of this, was that when humans began farming, they created stores of what they farmed, be they grain or oats or whatever. And those stores, those collection points, were magnets for vermin, specifically European mice and European rats in some of the northern climates before the rats became far more widespread. But vermin would come in, and they could, even today, rat or mouse infestation could destroy a season's harvest. But if you have cats nearby, all of a sudden there's something there to protect your harvest. And that relationship, was established very early on. And the cities in Greece, we know about the Greek cities, but we also know that around them were farms, the farms were what fed the Greek people. Agriculture at that point was an established staple. And if you had agriculture, you had to have a way to protect the grain silos and the collection points from vermin, and that's what cats were for. So even back then, we have the law saying, do not kill cats, which I wholeheartedly approve of. Now, interestingly enough, the Greeks actually incorporated some of the Egyptian tradition with Bastet's cat characteristics into the goddess Artemis. And there are several depictions of Artemis commanding cats or being associated with cats. So kind of that cultural transfer from the Egyptian experience, the Egyptian traditions, into Greek life. The Roman poet Ovid, he wrote a poem called Metamorphosis. And in it, there's a scene where all of the gods flee and they head to Egypt. And the goddess Diana changed into a cat to help both cover her exit so no one would know she was a goddess, and also to speed it on because cats move faster than people. Now, if we move north for another example in Norse mythology, Freya. Now, this is the Freya, the goddess of love, beauty, fertility. These are, and keep in mind, within the Nordic and the North cultures, love, beauty, fertility, these are powerful things. The idea of creating a family, of having children, of creating the next generation, that was a powerful cultural edict, especially in the Nordic traditions of the about the early 600s, 500s. In beauty and love, those emotions are timeless across, most of the European and Asian traditions in many respects. So this is a god who's talking about very important cultural points. And she's depicted as riding, there are depictions of her riding a chariot drawn by cats. I will say the artist had a highly inflated opinion of cats' willingness to cooperate on such things, but that's neither here nor there. But we have in those cultures, and there were agrarian, there were farmers within the Nordic people. And we know that there were long-haired cats up there who did the same thing that the African wildcat and its descendants did down near the Mediterranean and the Middle East, and it's guard the grain silos, to keep rats away from the food stores. In Jewish legend, and I want to be very specific, we are talking about legend, I am not dipping into theology with this statement, but in Jewish legend, the first cat was living in the house of the first man, Adam, and his role was as a pet who got rid of mice. And that's Judaism, the oldest of the Abrahamic religions. Now, if we move forward, when you get to the classic Middle Ages, and there's some conjecture about this, but it is believed that the cat characteristics of Artemis were indirectly transferred into some understandings of the Virgin Mary in the Middle Ages. And to this day, you can see some depictions of Mary with cats in the background or in various settings as part of her display. And moving forward to the last of the Abrahamic traditions, Islam. The Muslim Sufi, and I'm going to do my absolute best on this name, Ahmed Rafili. And if I mispronounce that, my sincere apologies. He was quoted. He was quoted as saying he would do without a cloak on a cold day rather than disturb a cat who was sleeping upon that same cloak. And even there are some contemporary writers who said that the Prophet Muhammad himself is noted by a great many historians to have been very fond and respectful of cats. And he was, many years after his passing, he was referred to by the nickname Abu Haraya, the father of kittens. So these are, and we are talking about, whatever your religious stance are, we are talking about several revered individuals who scholars, some contemporary too, openly talk about as being very respectful towards cats. In many of the same ways that some of us are today. So these behaviors, these relationships, these friendships are historical. They are medieval. They are absolutely current to the game we play in the SCA. And for those of you who own cats and occasionally let out some colorful language because the cat did something that you would really rather they not have, I present to you this picture. This is a 14th century manuscript out of Croatia. And as you can see, someone was either reading this book or was writing, probably was reading, and a cat had a mishap with some sort of ink blotter or ink pad. And the footprints speak for themselves. So if any scroll painters out there happen to have one of your cats traipse across your scroll and air quotes this, ruin it with a misplaced paw print, just understand you are in good and historical company, and yours truly is part of the medieval experience. Another one, this is a cat who quite literally left his mark. The Roman Empire, roughly, actually this one is, they apparently dated it to right around 2,000 years ago. Perhaps a little bit further AD. This is a piece of a Roman roof tile that, while it was still wet clay before it had been fired, a cat walked across it, and it left these footprints, which obviously survived because we have the tile today. Now, something you have to understand about art in the Middle Ages is the art we have today from the Middle Ages would have been respected art. I'm not saying all of it was the same level of respect or revered, but today you can go grab a piece of paper and a pencil and jot something down. In the Middle Ages, relatively few people could do that, and of the people who jotted stuff down, most of those sketches or most of those drawings are lost to antiquity. So what we have is a handful of art that was kept around, and is widely believed that most of the art that survives had significant emotional or intellectual impact on its day, which is why it was protected and stored so that we could see it today. Now, through that filter, I want to show you some of the art of the Middle Ages, because I find it absolutely fascinating. A cat playing a fiddle. This is sometime 1320, 1330 current age. Now, in this next one, don't look at the center panel, but if you look to the side, a cat and its piano from the late 15th century. Cat playing a piano. I mean, where the heck did this come from? But they painted it. They thought it would be something appropriate that the audience could engage at, either humorously or metaphorically or whatever. Now, for everyone whose cat ever ran off with your weaving, this one is a cat playing with a spindle from the early 14th century. And I think all of us can tell stories of cats going, oh, this is fun, and running off with something that we were working on. A little more anthropomorphic here, but a cat playing with a cymbal. And again, this is about the late 13th century. But that idea of a cat playing an instrument was obviously an image that, while not real, it obviously engaged people. For the same reason we engage people today. It's the same reason we have cartoon characters as cats sometimes. Because, we recognize cats have personality, and the idea of a cat playing a cymbal, while not possible, we can believe it enough to find it funny or engaging or amusing. And this is proof they had the same thoughts back then. And this is a spotted cat spotted on a lap. The painting is specifically in the 1540s. Now, this one from 1538 current age is Cat Meets Dog. Say no more. Now, this one, some people want to say this is the artist who was badly drawing the cat. I'm looking at it going, or it was a well-drawn bad cat. But this is a cross-eyed and cute. That's how it is described from the 14th century. Now, this one seems a bit mundane, but this is actually important because it recognizes why cats have their place in our society, even to this day. A Cat Carrying a Mouse, 1515. Now, this is one I can relate to wholeheartedly, and that's the cat supervisor. I don't know if this is the contemporary name for it, but the idea of the cat, distinctly in your space watching you, but doing nothing to help and doing nothing to leave you alone. And this painting is from the 14th century. A mouse delivery from 1340. Now, this drawing is entitled An Uninterested Cat. I don't know if this is the contemporary name for it, but it's from the 14th century. But it is a cat kind of just off to the side of the middle of things going on, and he is completely disinterested in everything going on in the room. Tell me you have cats in your lives without saying you have cats in your lives. And this last one, now this is a very specific reference. This is a cat and mice facing off. Now this is from the Book of Kells. And this Book of Kells is extremely well documented. We know when, where, why, and how. 800 current age. And the cat and the mouse facing off. Now, obviously, we don't know exactly what's going through the mind of the artist, but the idea of the mouse representing the vermin who destroy grain in food stores and who, invade our houses and destroy things, and the cat has the guardian who fights them off and kills them for us. That's well documented by this point. So this depiction of the cat and the mouse squaring off in respective fighting poses as adversaries in the Book of Kells, which is a critically important and very, very well recognized document. It points out that man was acutely aware of the role and how important cats were in his society. If you took cats out of the equation at any point in human history, that human evolution, human society, the shape of its progress changes drastically. And something else that a lot of people don't realize, this is actually some newer science that lets us get a really good perspective on history. Recent research on cat vocalizations. Now, cats have always had a very complex language compared to other animals. They have multiple vocalizations, multiple sounds, and multiple body gestures that they make to communicate. And while a lot of those gestures are seen in the wild, the fact of the matter is the domesticated cat has a very different use for many of those gestures. And what's interesting is we now know that many of those gestures and sounds and vocalizations are used differently towards humans than they are towards other cats. The meow, the stereotypical cat sound that we teach children, this is what cats say. Cats don't meow at each other that much. That's not a common vocalization. That's something kittens do to their mothers, or sometimes adults will do as a sign of affection, or when they're in distress. But that's not a common sound, but yet domesticated house cats meow at us all the time. And we know historically from letters, works of art, or from written works of art, some plays, that the meow was a sound cats made to people back then. And that we now understand, even though they didn't understand it, that is a sound a cat makes towards a parental figure in its family that it looks up to. Another thing, and this is an experience that I've had, kittens or young adults who are still living as part of the larger family before they grow up and leave the house, their mother will teach them how to hunt, and then they will go out and they'll either catch something mom brought back alive, or they'll go out and hunt, and they will bring the kill back to mom to show off. How, hey, look, I did it. I know how to hunt. And I've had that experience. about 7 years ago, our cat Yuri, when he was a kitten, he and Marriott were just kittens, maybe a year old, I guess. And we had mice in the house. Actually, it wasn't even a year. It was just a couple of months. They were a couple of months old. And my wife actually grabbed both the cats, scruffed them, hooked them up, put them on the counter, and showed them, there's a mouse back here. You need to go find it, and pointed them. And they got encouraged to go hunt that way. And then a few days later, my wife and I are in bed, out like lights. It's early morning. I think it was a Saturday. And I'm out. I am. And I wake up to my wife sitting bolt upright with a gasp. And I look over, and on the edge of her pillow, right by her face, is this dead mouse. And we look down at the foot of the bed, and there's Yuri, and there's Marriott, both sitting there, prim and proper, shoulders back, feet together, ears straight up, wide-eyed, and you could read it on their face. It's like, look, Mom, look what we did, look what we did. And after my wife got the gasp off her shoulder, collected the mouse, threw it out, scrubbed her face down, went to the bathroom and decontaminated, she praised both of them. They did exactly what we wanted them to. But this practice that we've had here in the modern day is something that we can document happening in the Middle Ages. This was a medieval experience. And again, we know that because there are writings, contemporary writings, that talk about this happening to farmers or their wives or their kids, sometimes landowners, sometimes the wealthy would come in the door from the day's rounds or riding off to talk to so-and-so, and their house cat would be sitting at their doorstep with a mouse going, I did my job, see? And so we know that, and it's not a huge leap in the least to extrapolate that this type of relationship took place in Greece, in Rome, in Egypt, in the early agricultural tribes who transitioned from a hunter-gatherer into farming. This is a behavior which we know goes back millennia. So as you engage in your medieval game and you go for that bolt of fabric working on a shirt and there's a cat there, remember that the Prophet Muhammad himself said he'd sooner leave his cloak and go cold than disturb a cat who's sleeping on it. Or the next time you're working on a scroll and a cat destroys it, just remember that poor guy who checked out the book in Croatia and had to return it with cat paw prints on it. The next time you wake up and there's a dead rodent on your pillow or at your feet in your bed, just remember that every farmer, shop owner, or butcher can probably attest to some similar encounter going back, 1, 2, 3,000 years maybe. Cats have always been there. To talk about medieval life is to include the cat. And the reason why this video is being made now is last week Yuri fell ill, and we took him to the local 24-hour vet, and they kept him for observation, and the next day his condition worsened, and the next day it got worse, and the next day it got worse. And we had a moment where we thought he wasn't going to make it, and he rallied, and you could see it in his eyes. He was sick and he was tired, but he still had fight left in him. He wanted to live, and we gave him another day. We pushed. We did another treatment. Yeah. But by yesterday morning, the worst was decided. There wasn't hope. There wasn't a cure. There wasn't a treatment left. He was declining fast, and it was becoming painful. And we gathered there, my wife, my son, and I, and we said our final goodbyes, and we made sure that the last things he heard were our tearful, loving blessings to him. And the last thing he felt was my embrace on my chest, because he always liked to sleep on me. When I sat down, he would hop up right here. And I was there with him at the end. And I cried. I broke down in absolute tears and sobbed afterward, long after he had passed. And I don't want this moment to just be a dark spot for me. And it is dark. This is still raw and painful. And grief is a process that I am only now starting to process. But I wanted to turn some of this energy, I wanted to turn some of this loss into something productive. I wanted to create something to help inform and educate and entertain you. I don't ever want to forget any part of Yuri's life. He was family. He was an 8-year-old cat in his prime who was the elder statesman of the house, a powerful hunter, a great friend, a companion, and in the end, a fighter who lost his last fight. And I want to remember all of it, and I wanted to share the history and the context of what made his life so amazing with you, so that you can take a little bit of that fun and that energy and that history with you to your next SCA meeting or game. And just close out with remembering the best of times with my friend and a wonderful, wonderful member of my family. God bless, old friend. You'll be missed.
On a sad grey day stands a ship in the bay, waiting to take our loved ones away. As she sails out of sight on that day, we'll cry, there she goes, she's away. But on that other shore stand old friends who watch the blue horizon. When they see the mainsail blown by the wind, they cry, here she comes, here she comes. On that other shore stands a great golden hall. A fire is lit, the boards are laid, all around standing friends line the hall. Cups in hand, a toast to be made. For on that other shore stand old friends who watch the blue see the mainsail blown by the wind, they cry, here she comes, here she comes. For all of us, the white ship sails, taking us from our kith and our kin. But remember this as she sails, each parting a welcome will become. For on that other shore stand old friends who watch the blue horizon. When they see the mainsail blown by the wind, they cry, here she comes, here she comes.